That morning, the fog rolled in, like a whisper, soft, thick, clinging to everything it touched. From the outside, it looked like any ordinary Tuesday in the pine-covered hills of northern Washington. The small college town of Halden Ridge woke slowly. Cafes lit their front windows. The bakery filled the street with the smell of cinnamon and flour. Students spilled onto the sidewalks, half-asleep earbuds in backpacks heavy. But beneath it all, beneath the hum of morning, something felt off. Not that anyone could say what. It would start the way most tragedies do. Small, unremarkable, a skipped class, a missed call, a text that was never answered. At first, it was just Samira, 19 literature major, raised in Oregon. She'd emailed her professor the night before apologizing for her late paper. She sounded stressed, said something about the woods and needing to think, but no one took it seriously. College kids are always wandering. Then came Eli, 21, art history. Always wore vintage coats and carried a sketchbook like an extra limb. He didn't show up for studio, never missed a class before. When the professor called roll, there was a long pause after his name, then nothing. Then Kelsey. Then Jordan. By Wednesday night, 5 students hadn't returned to their dorms. By Friday, the number had grown to 10. And by Sunday, it was 14. 14 students. Gone. No break-ins, no bodies, no trace. The police tried to keep it quiet at first. Local chatter was dismissed as panic. There were whispers of a protest, a silent, student-led walkout. Maybe they'd run away together, a statement against rising tuition, against climate collapse, against something. But no one posted anything online. No manifesto, no selfies, no tweets, just silence. And their rooms were strange. Not ransacked, not abandoned. Lived in. One dorm had still warm coffee in a mug. A guitar pick lay on the floor. A ring sat beside the sink, like someone had just washed their hands. It felt like they'd stepped outside and vanished. Detective Mark Rowan had retired in 2009 after 32 years on the force. Halden Ridge PD was never the kind of place that saw much crime. A few overdoses, a domestic dispute here and there. But this was something else, something that didn't fit in any manual. He sat in the back of his cabin now, listening to the wind rattle the old pine boards when the call came in. They were reopening the case. 14 students, vanished 10 years ago to the day, and they'd found something. Something buried. Detective Rowan hadn't set foot near Halden Ridge University in nearly a decade. After the investigation was closed in 2015, after the search dogs found nothing, after the forest swallowed every footprint and trace of breath, he put the case away, with the others unsolved and unyielding. But now, 10 years later, something had shifted. It began with a hiker, a woman named Alice Romero, mid-30s, school teacher from Spokane. She'd come to Halden Ridge for a solo camping trip. She wasn't familiar with the stories, not really. She'd heard there were trails here, shaded quiet, not too touristy. She set out at dawn, around mile 4 deep in the ridgeline that locals now avoided without saying why she took a wrong turn. The trail markers were weathered, almost erased by time. She followed what looked like a footpath. It led her into a grove of trees that had long stopped growing. Dead trunks, bark flaking like burnt paper. No birds, no insects, no sound. That's where she saw it. A shallow depression in the earth. At first, she thought it was just erosion. But the edges were too sharp, like it had been dug. Then she noticed the shapes inside. Worn, fabric-covered shapes, partially unearthed. Not bones, not bodies. Backpacks, 14 of them. Lined up side by side, each one tagged with a name. Samira, Eli, Kelsey, Jordan, and 10 more. The The same 14 names burned into the town's memory. And inside those bags, personal items that had supposedly been cataloged and returned to families years ago. Journals, phones, wallets, things that had never ever been recovered. Detective Rowan stood over them now beneath the same lifeless trees. The bags had been protected somehow, wrapped in waxed cloth, sealed in a way that suggested intention. Not random, not careless. Someone had placed them here and preserved them. But why, and why now? Rowan held Samira's journal in his gloved hands. The pages were warped but legible, written in black ink, erratic handwriting. The entries stopped abruptly. The last page read, "We keep hearing it at night. A voice, calling from the ravine. I don't think it's a person. We tried to leave yesterday, but the compass spun for hours. I swear we walked in circles. I saw Eli crying. Kelsey won't speak. It's like something is watching us. If we don't make it out, tell my brother I'm sorry." No date, no location. Just ink that had long since dried into dread. The woods surrounding Halden Ridge had always carried a reputation, not cursed, not haunted, just unsettling. Locals said compasses behaved strangely in certain areas. Hikers occasionally reported losing time, seeing lights, or hearing things, whispers, branches cracking when the air was still. But no one ever proved anything, until now. The FBI reclassified the missing persons case. No longer just disappeared. Now officially unexplained anomaly. They flew in special teams, not just forensic units, atmospheric specialists, geologists, even theoretical physicists. Rowan watched them comb the grove with strange-looking equipment, listening devices, barometric scanners, instruments he didn't recognize. They weren't just looking for clues. They were looking for something else. 2 nights later, one of the techs went missing. Her name was Dr. Lenora Chan, 34, geophysicist. She'd been running a magnetic survey by herself near the ridge's edge. At 8:42 p.m., her GPS signal went dead. Her last recorded radio transmission was a whisper. "I see something in the trees." No scream, no impact, just silence. They found her equipment still recording, but not her. After that, something shifted again. The investigation quieted. No press releases, no statements. Whatever was happening in those woods, it was no longer just a search for missing students. It had become a containment. Rowan stayed longer than he was supposed to. Days passed, then a week. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that journal, Samira's words crawling like vines behind his eyelids. It's like something is watching us. And then one morning, alone in the clearing, he found a footprint. Fresh, small, a sneaker print the kind worn by a college student. But the forest floor was undisturbed. No trail in, no trail out, just the print clear as a memory. He knelt beside it, heart pounding. And then he noticed something else. Next to the footprint, half buried in pine needles, a charm bracelet. It was engraved. One word: hope. The students were never found, not truly. No bodies, no DNA, no remains. But over the next 3 weeks, objects began to surface. One by one. A scarf caught in a tree branch, a cracked phone screen with static flickering across it. A voice message garbled but recognizable. It was Eli's voice. "We're still here. Don't follow." Before the world knew them as a headline, before their names were etched into missing person flyers and murmured across late-night message boards, they were just students. 14 of them. Some knew each other, most didn't. They didn't share a class or a club or even a major. They came from different states, different families, different griefs. But somehow, without realizing it, they were orbiting the same invisible center, drawn to the same silence. Samira was the quiet one. Always had been. She grew up in a gray house at the edge of a rainy Oregon suburb. Her mother died when she was 9, aneurysm sudden, no goodbye. Her father was a librarian, loved maps. She used to fall asleep listening to the sound of pages turning in the next room. By the time she got to college, Samira had already lived a dozen inner lives. Her poetry professor said she wrote like someone who had seen the end of something. What no one knew, not even her roommate, was that Samira had been researching something. The woods. Specifically, the ridge. Old news clippings. Town folklore. Pre-settlement Native American legends, all centered around a stretch of forest that early settlers described as spirit-broken land. The indigenous Salish people avoided it completely. They had a name for it, where the earth listens but does not answer. Samira had underlined it in one of her notebooks 3 times. Eli was different. He wasn't looking for answers. He was trying to escape them. His twin sister drowned when they were 16. No accident. He was there. He saw her fall, slipped off a cliff while hiking. He tried to reach her, but he froze. Couldn't move, couldn't scream. For years he carried that moment like a shadow in his chest. People said he was gifted. His sketches were surreal landscapes that looked familiar but twisted impossible. One of them showed a forest, dead trees in a circle. He drew it months before he ever came to Halden Ridge. Kelsey had dreams, not metaphorical ones, literal. She would wake up sweating, heart racing. Sometimes she saw a clearing in the woods, sometimes a door half buried in the ground. Other times she just heard voices, not words, just tone, like someone pleading beneath the earth. She kept a dream journal. On the last page, she had scribbled one sentence again and again it wants us to remember. They all had something. A scar, a hunger, a silence they couldn't explain. And in the spring of 2015, one by one, they started spending more time near the edge of the forest. Some called it the line, that invisible border where the sunlight started to feel wrong, where the air pressed against your skin thick and heavy, where you looked behind you and suddenly weren't sure how far you'd walked or if the path back was the same. They didn't plan a trip. They didn't announce anything. But they began gathering. Sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone. Journals later recovered from a few of their rooms revealed cryptic notes, overlapping ideas. It's not a place. It's a threshold. We're not going there. We're already inside it. I don't think time works the same there. 1 week before their disappearance, a blurry photo appeared on Kelsey's Instagram story. It was taken at dusk. In the frame, 13 figures standing in a circle in the forest, their faces turned upward. There was a 14th figure just outside the frame, barely visible, almost translucent, like the motion blur of something moving too fast to see. She captioned it with one word, remember. None of their families knew what was coming. That's the part that never stops hurting. There were no signs, no farewells. Just that quiet ripple. A withdrawal from the world, a subtle shift, until they were gone. Now, years later, their pasts were surfacing like bones in thawed earth. Detective Rowan sat in the university archives, flipping through old sign-in sheets, course rosters, group photos. And that's when he noticed it. In a photo taken 6 months before the disappearances, a campus cleanup day, all 14 students were present. Different groups, different locations, but each one of them had been there. And in the background, half hidden behind a tree, was a figure. Not a student, not a staff member. A man, wearing a long coat hat low. His face was blurred, but his body language, rigid, turned toward the camera, suggested he knew he was being watched. Rowan had the photo enhanced. The technology was limited and the image degraded. But when they ran it through facial pattern software, no matches. Not in any federal, state, or global database. Almost as if he didn't exist. That's what made it worse. After everything, the missing students, the found bags, the geophysicist vanishing in plain air, the forest still stood. Silent. Indiff not decayed, not burned. Like a mouth that had already swallowed and no longer needed to chew. He returned to the grove again it was nearly midnight. The sky had no star. He crouched near the row of backpacks again, now tagged, cataloged, and ready for evidence transport. That's when he heard it. A breath. Soft. Behind him. Not the wind. Not an animal. Breath. He stood. Turned. Nothing. But then he noticed the trees, every one of them, had a thin strip of bark missing vertically peeled the raw wood underneath, gouged with small deep notches. Symbols. Primitive. Repeated. He photographed one and sent it to a linguist at the university. She called him 3 hours later, her voice low. I don't know what this is exactly. But it's not a language. It's older than that. It's a pattern. A signal. Meant to be seen, not read. Like a memory trying to remember itself. The FBI shut the investigation down within 72 hours. No press release, no conclusion. Just silence. The evidence was sealed. Families were told the same thing, no further leads. Unofficially, the term used was containment breach. They fenced the grove, posted signs, environmental hazard, do not enter. Locals knew better. The land was changing, or waking. 3 months later, something else happened. Late one night, a forest ranger doing routine perimeter checks radioed in. His voice was panicked. I don't know what I'm seeing. There's light. Coming out of the ground, pulsing. Trees are bending toward it. There's sound, no vibration. I can feel it in my chest. The transmission cut. They found his truck the next day. Door open, engine still running. No footprints, no ranger. But scrawled across the inside of the windshield in black marker were 2 words. It waits. By now, Rowan had stopped fighting his instincts. He knew what he had to do. He returned one last time. This time not with evidence bags or radios, just a single photograph. The one from the student cleanup day. 14 students. One blurred man. He walked to the center of the grove, heart pounding. Kneeled. Placed the photo on the earth. And waited. At first nothing. Then a breeze. And then something new. Not sound. A pull. In the bones. A sensation like gravity had shifted sideways. The trees around him leaned ever so slightly, though no wind blew. Then a whisper. Right behind his ear. One still remembers. He didn't move, couldn't. The forest was breathing. Not metaphorically, literally. A low inhale, a stillness. Then the exhale, thick and warm, like something ancient had just noticed him. And then for a moment he saw them. Not their bodies, not ghosts, impressions. 14 faint outlines standing between the trees, their faces blurred as if underwater, their eyes wide, not pleading, not afraid, just waiting, as if they were studying him. He left the woods before dawn, resigned, unchanged on the surface. But something inside him had cracked. He stopped returning calls, moved north, built a cabin near a lake. He never told anyone what he saw, but every so often he wakes at 3:33 a.m., and the numbers 14 blink on his alarm clock even though it's unplugged. 6 months ago, a freshman at Halden Ridge posted on Reddit. It was taken down within an hour, but someone saved it. A photo, taken during a hike. In the distance, through a split in the trees, a figure, wearing a vintage coat, holding a sketchbook, face partially obscured by shadow. But unmistakably, Eli. hadn't aged a day. The caption read, "There were 14. Now there are 15. No one really knows where Halden Ridge is anymore. And if you happen to find it on a map, don't go looking for it. The forest doesn't want to be found. It wants to be forgotten. It wants silence. And it always keeps what it takes. But somewhere, if you stand still enough far from the city lights, where the wind stops moving, where the birds go silent, where the ground feels too soft beneath your feet, you might hear something. Not a scream, not a voice. Just a sound older than language, like breath moving through rotting leaves, like something remembering. And if you stand there too long, you might forget who you are, forget what you came to find, because the forest, it never gives back what it keeps. And some disappearances were never meant to be solved.